my name is Lou Duran. I was born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and in 2011, my son passed away from an accidental overdose. From that moment on, I joined Healing Addiction in Our Community, which is a nonprofit that was founded in 2010. I eventually also began working at Serenity Mesa. What's done is they've changed laws so that now a physician, if you prescribe narcotics, you now have to take 4 hours a year of education when it comes to prescribing. So we have encouraged through that legislation for doctors to no longer give 30-day prescription for maybe a wisdom tooth that's been pulled. You only need a couple days of that narcotic, and then you could just use Tylenol. So doctors, over the years, legislation has changed. But definitely the trend and what got us here to this epidemic of prescription pills was definitely the pattern of how the doctors were prescribing. They were over-prescribing. Okay. When my son was in 8th grade, I discovered that he was smoking pot. And over the next couple of years, he continued to smoke pot. He was an athlete. He was a triathlete, actually, and he played baseball, basketball, and soccer. And in 10th grade, he was introduced to a prescription pill by the name of OxyContin. He was introduced to it by a coworker, and he discovered that he loved the effects of what the drug offered him. Because it was prescribed by a doctor for an injury that he had, he felt that he didn't see it as drugs or drug addiction or drug use, because he figured it was a pill that came from a doctor or from a pharmacy. So his journey began 10th grade. He, within 6 months, within 6 months he was completely addicted to Oxy. And thus his journey began in trying to find him help locally. And because there was such a lack of resources back then for youth under 18, we had a really hard time finding help locally. And really, we were not the only family going through that. There were several families in Albuquerque experiencing the same thing. And some of them lost their children, some of them had children that were alive, and they were trying to help them as well.
I work with adolescents ages 14 to 21 who struggle with co-occurring disorders that consists of mental health struggles and substance use addiction struggles. What makes me passionate about this work is I come from a family that has generational drug use struggles. My mom was addicted to crack cocaine since birth, and also she has bipolar disorder and a traumatic brain injury. So having my mom go through so many different struggles and me looking for her on the streets, trying to make sure she was okay, really motivated me to do this kind of work. Also, I just had, uncles and aunts and grandmothers and grandfathers that all used drugs. So it was kind of a normal thing in my life. To sit at the table and shoot up dope was kind of the norm.
How can someone overcome a prescribed addiction?
That's a good question. I think it takes a lot of different things to overcome prescribed addiction. You never really think of it. You go to a doctor and you're injured from a sports injury or a car accident or something just very basic, and you get prescribed pain medication. So you take it as prescribed, thinking, well, the doctors know what's best for me. And then before you know it, you just sort of crave these things. So it's very difficult once your body becomes tolerant with these kinds of prescribed medications. And then at some point you seek heroin or meth because you can no longer get a high on the prescribed drugs. So it really takes a lot of support. It takes community resources, and it takes it takes motivation within yourself, which
I work with people who have substance abuse dependence and mental health issues. Yeah, that's what I do.
Do you have any personal stories about opioid abuse?
Yes, myself, I was a heroin addict for 22 years. And I've experienced a lot of things through that. I've experienced prison life, being homeless, being in institutions my whole life. So I have a lot of experience in this field, and now I work in the field, and I help others that have the same type of problems I did, or worse, or less. And I like to bring awareness to the community about drug addiction, alcoholism, any type of that experience. I like to give that to other people and let them know that there's hope out there, and be an advocate for people who can't advocate for themselves.
Identifying opioids.
Opioids is a dependence. It's a substance where people get physically dependent on. That if they don't take the substance, they're physically sick. But it's not just being physically sick, it's about being emotionally sick, spiritually sick. And I see it more and more with society today, how the generations are just getting younger and younger and younger. And it's not just to our minority places here in Albuquerque, it's throughout every community and every culture. And it's not just, minorities anymore. It's different type of people now, and it's just real diverse, the new epidemic of opioids.